Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why does everything always go wrong for me? Or, I'll never be good enough? These thoughts might feel natural, but they could be cognitive distortions, a sneaky way your brain twists reality, creating unnecessary stress and self-doubt. So, what are cognitive distortions? They are biased ways of thinking that negatively influence our perception of reality. They often involve irrational or exaggerated thought patterns that can lead to emotional distress, poor decision-making, or unhelpful behaviors. These distortions are common in conditions like anxiety, depression, and stress, but can also affect anyone during challenging situations. Recognizing and addressing cognitive distortions can help improve mental health and overall well-being. So, where do they come from? Cognitive distortions often stem from early life experiences, learned behaviors from role models, biological factors like brain chemistry and stress or trauma, which can reinforce irrational thought patterns. Cultural and social influences, such as societal pressures or stereotypes, also play a role in shaping distorted thinking. Over time, these patterns can become habitual, making them automatic responses to certain situations. Let's dive deep into these mental traps, what they are, where they come from, and most importantly, how to break free. Number 1. All or nothing thinking. It is also known as black and white thinking, is a common cognitive distortion where people view situations, themselves, or others in extremes without considering the gray areas in between. It's the mindset of everything is perfect or it's a complete failure. For example, a student who gets one bad grade might think, I'm terrible at school, disregarding all their previous successes. This distortion often leads to feelings of inadequacy, stress, and even depression because it sets up unrealistic standards and amplifies self-criticism when those standards aren't met. It's also harmful in relationships. For instance, perceiving a single disagreement as proof that the entire relationship is doomed. This type of thinking limits problem-solving and the ability to grow because it prevents individuals from seeing progress or partial success. It can stem from perfectionism, fear of failure, or learned patterns from a young age. Number 2. Overgeneralization. Overgeneralization is a cognitive distortion where individuals take a single negative event and assume it represents a universal truth, applying it to all aspects of their lives. For example, after failing a job interview, someone might think, I'll never get hired anywhere, ignoring other opportunities and their qualifications. This type of thinking often uses words like always, never, or everyone, exaggerating the scope of a situation and creating a cycle of pessimism and hopelessness. Overgeneralization can erode self-esteem, increase anxiety, and prevent people from taking risks or trying again after setbacks. It often originates from past experiences or learned behaviors, where patterns of failure or rejection were magnified. Number 3. Mental filtering. It is a cognitive distortion where individuals focus solely on the negative aspects of a situation, filtering out any positive details or accomplishments, leading to a skewed and overly pessimistic view of reality. It's like wearing dark-tinted glasses that make everything seem worse than it is. For instance, after receiving a performance review with 9 positive comments and 1 critique, a person with this distortion might obsess over the single critique and ignore the praise entirely. This pattern of thinking can increase feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, and depression as the person fails to see the bigger, more balanced picture. Mental filtering often stems from perfectionism, low self-esteem, or a learned focus on negative outcomes as a form of self-protection. Over time, it can damage relationships, hinder personal growth, and reinforce a negative self-image. Number 4. Disqualifying the positive. In this type of cognitive distortion, individuals reject or dismiss positive experiences, feedback, or achievements by convincing themselves they are insignificant, undeserved, or mere flukes. This distortion prevents people from internalizing their successes and instead reinforces a negative self-perception. For example, someone who receives a compliment on their work might think, they're just being nice, or anyone could have done this, thereby invalidating the recognition. This way of thinking often stems from low self-esteem, past criticism, or a fear of appearing overconfident. It creates a vicious cycle where no amount of positivity feels genuine or sufficient, which can lead to chronic dissatisfaction, feelings of inadequacy, and depression. Number 5. Jumping to conclusions. In this type of cognitive distortion, individuals make assumptions or predictions without sufficient evidence, often leading to inaccurate or negative interpretations of events. It typically manifests in 2 ways: mind reading and fortune telling. Mind reading involves assuming you know what others are thinking, often concluding they have negative opinions or intentions toward you without any real proof. For example, you might think, they didn't say hello, so they must be upset with me. Fortune-telling involves predicting negative outcomes, such as assuming, I'll fail this presentation, even before it happens. These automatic thoughts can trigger unnecessary anxiety, insecurity, or self-doubt, limiting opportunities for growth and positive interactions. Jumping to conclusions often stems from past experiences, heightened sensitivity to rejection, or a need for certainty in uncertain situations. Number 6, catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is a cognitive distortion where individuals magnify a situation's potential negative outcomes, assuming the worst-case scenario will inevitably happen. This pattern of thinking exaggerates challenges, making them seem impossible, and creates a spiral of anxiety and fear. For instance, if someone makes a small mistake at work, they might think, I'll get fired and I'll never find another job, even though there's no evidence to support such an extreme outcome. This distortion often arises from heightened stress, a fear of failure, or previous negative experiences that reinforce worst-case thinking. It can lead to chronic worry, decision paralysis, and avoidance behaviors as individuals feel overwhelmed by imagined disasters. Number 7, emotional reasoning. Emotional reasoning is a cognitive distortion where individuals assume their emotions reflect absolute truth, believing that if they feel something, it must be real or valid, regardless of evidence. For example, someone feeling anxious before a social event might conclude, I feel nervous, so I must be awkward and this will be a disaster. This distortion blurs the line between feelings and facts, leading people to rely solely on their emotions to interpret reality. Emotional reasoning often amplifies negativity, as emotions like fear, guilt, or sadness are interpreted as indicators of failure, danger, or inadequacy. It can stem from a heightened sensitivity to emotions or a lack of trust in logical analysis. While emotions are valuable signals, relying entirely on them without evaluating the situation objectively can result in poor decision-making, self-doubt, and unnecessary stress. Number 8, should statements. Should statements are a cognitive distortion where individuals impose rigid, unrealistic expectations on themselves or others, often leading to guilt, frustration, or resentment. These statements typically involve words like should, must, or ought to, reflecting an inflexible view of how things are supposed to be. For example, someone might think, I should always be productive, and feel like a failure when they take a break, or they must appreciate my effort, leading to disappointment if others don't respond as expected. These self-imposed rules can stem from societal pressures, cultural norms, or personal perfectionism, creating a constant cycle of dissatisfaction and stress. Should statements also harm relationships, as placing unrealistic demands on others can lead to tension and misunderstandings. Number 9, labeling. Labeling is a cognitive distortion where individuals assign fixed, negative labels to themselves or others based on a single event or behavior, ignoring the broader context or evidence to the contrary. This type of thinking oversimplifies complex human experiences, reducing people to one-dimensional judgments. For example, after making a mistake, someone might think, I'm such a failure, rather than acknowledging it as a learning opportunity. Similarly, they might label others with terms like lazy or selfish, based on isolated actions, which can damage relationships and create unnecessary conflict. Labeling is particularly harmful because it reinforces negative self-perceptions, fuels low self-esteem, and discourages personal growth. It often stems from internalized criticism, cultural conditioning, or a tendency toward perfectionism. Number 10, personalization. Personalization is another cognitive distortion where individuals blame themselves for events outside their control or assume undue responsibility for negative outcomes. This pattern of thinking leads to a heightened sense of guilt, inadequacy, or self-blame as people interpret situations through a lens of self-centered causality. For instance, if a colleague is upset, someone engaging in personalization might think, it's because I said something wrong, even if the colleague's mood has nothing to do with them. This distortion often stems from past experiences, such as being held accountable for things as a child or a deep desire to maintain control over situations. It can lead to chronic stress, feelings of worthlessness, and strained relationships due to the assumption of excessive blame. Cognitive distortions may feel like a natural part of life, but they don't have to control your thoughts or emotions. By recognizing these patterns and learning to reframe them, you can take a huge step toward a healthier, more balanced mindset. Remember, self-awareness is the first step to change, and every effort you make to challenge these distortions is progress. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Health Vitals for more insights on mental health and well-being. And as always, take care of your mind, because a healthy mind is the foundation of a healthy life. See you in the next video.